May 4, 1942, Yokosuka Naval Air Station. The morning fog swirls around our aircraft like ghosts. I trace my fingers along the Hinomaru painted on the wing of my A6M20, still pristine, still unbloodied. Nakamura-san says we are the wind itself. I believe him. Yesterday during training I climbed to 6,000 meters in less than 7 minutes. The instructors nodded with approval. My father would have been proud to see his son selected for the Imperial Japanese Navy's elite pilot program. Only 1 in 7 candidates passes the tests. The others wash out, return to their villages in shame. I will not be among them. The Zero feels like an extension of my body. 840 horsepower from the Nakajima Sakai engine, yet the aircraft weighs only 1,680 kilograms empty. It dances in the air, responds to the slightest pressure on the stick. American intelligence reports captured in the Philippines reveal their disbelief at our aircraft's capabilities. Impossible, they wrote. No fighter can turn at such rates and maintain altitude. Yet I have done it. We have all done it. I write this diary against regulations. Lieutenant Okumura would have me flogged if he discovered these pages. A warrior of the Emperor needs no record beyond his deeds, he tells us. But my grandfather was a poet before he was a soldier in the Russo-Japanese War. He kept a record of his days. I shall do the same. Perhaps someday my son will read these words and understand why I fought. Tonight we received our first combat assignment. The fleet sails at dawn. We are bound for a place called the Coral Sea. The briefing was short, precise. American carriers have been spotted. We will find them. We will destroy them. When the intelligence officer displayed the map, I felt a tightness in my chest. Such distance over open water. The Zero's range is impressive, 1,930 kilometers, but the Pacific is vast beyond comprehension. I pray to the spirits of my ancestors for favorable winds. Kai Samu died today during a final training flight. Engine failure at 300 meters, too low to bail out. His Zero struck the water at the harbor entrance, cartwheeled once, then vanished. The squadron observed 30 seconds of silence, then continued preparations. His name was not mentioned again. I helped myself to his extra pair of goggles. He would have wanted another pilot to have them. We were friends since flight school, but war allows little time for mourning. I wonder if my death, when it comes, will pass with such brevity of ceremony. Later. I cannot sleep. The ship rocks gently beneath my hammock. 325 men packed into the carrier Shokaku. The air smells of fuel, sweat, and steel. The older pilots drink sake and speak of victories to come. The younger ones study maps or write letters home. I alone write this diary. From the hangar deck comes the sound of mechanics working through the night. The tap-tap-tap of hammers on metal. The hiss of welding torches. Our Zeros must be perfect tomorrow. Any flaw could mean death over the endless ocean. They say the Americans are soft, unprepared. Lieutenant Okumura fought in China and says all round eyes fear death too much to make good pilots. But I have studied the reports. The Americans build aircraft at an alarming rate. In 1941 alone, their factories produced over 19,000 military aircraft. Our entire naval air arm has fewer than 3,000. We must make up the difference with superior training, superior spirit. The instructors say 1 Japanese pilot is worth 10 American pilots. We shall see if numbers or spirit prevails. May 7th, 1942. Coral Sea. First combat. First blood. My hands still shake as I write these words. We launched before dawn, 27 Zeros escorting 62 bombers. The carrier pitched in the swells as we thundered down the deck. 1 second of terror as the bow dipped, and my Zero seemed to aim at the sea rather than the sky. Then lift. Freedom. The formation assembled in the lavender light of early morning. Nothing in training prepared me for the reality of air combat. The Americans found us 80 kilometers from their carrier. Wildcats, F4 F3s, clumsy compared to our Zeros, but well armed with 650 caliber machine guns. Their pilots showed no fear, drove straight into our formation. I had one in my sights squeeze the trigger. My 2 20mm cannon and 2 7.7mm machine guns hammered. I saw my tracers walk across his wing, then his cockpit. Black smoke. He rolled inverted, dove away. My first victory. I had no time to celebrate. An American appeared behind me, tracers streaming past my canopy. I threw the Zero into a tight turn that no American aircraft could follow. The G-forces crushed me into my seat. Blackness crept into the edges of my vision. The Zero saved my life with its maneuverability. When I completed the turn, the American was gone, seeking easier prey. We lost 8 Zeros, 11 bombers. The Americans lost more, but they can replace their losses. Already we hear their factories work around the clock. 3 shifts, 7 days a week. How long can we match such production? I do not share these thoughts with my squadron mates. Such doubts dishonor the Emperor. May 24, 1942. At sea. We have been recalled to participate in a major operation. Admiral Yamamoto has planned something significant, though we pilots know only fragments. The officers speak in hushed tones of a place called Midway. An atoll, they say. That will be the anvil upon which we shall break the American fleet. I have 4 victory flags painted beneath my cockpit now. 4 American pilots sent to the bottom of the Coral Sea. I should feel pride, but instead feel a strange emptiness. The squadron treats me with new respect. Even Lieutenant Okumura nodded to me at breakfast this morning. Yet I wonder about the men I've killed. Did they have diaries, families waiting for their return? I must not think this way. They were enemies of Japan. That is all that matters. Our mechanics work miracles with dwindling supplies. My Zero developed a fuel leak yesterday. In Japan, they would simply replace the fuel line. Here, with spare parts growing scarce, they fashioned a repair from materials at hand. It will hold, the crew chief assured me, though his eyes suggested otherwise. We both know that a Zero with a fuel leak is a flying crematorium. One trace around, and I would become a torch against the sky. The new pilots arrived yesterday. Replacements for our losses. Their faces are so young, their uniforms too crisp and clean. They gather around veterans like myself, hungry for wisdom that might keep them alive. I tell them what I can, but omit the worst truths, the smell of burning aviation fuel, the screams on the radio as a Zero becomes a funeral pyre, the cold terror of ditching in shark-infested waters. Some truths cannot be taught, only experienced. June 4th, 1942. Midway. Disaster. I write this from the destroyer Arashi, which plucked me from the sea 3 hours after my Zero was shot down. My flying suit still reeks of salt water and aviation fuel. Of the 24 Zeros that launched from Akagi this morning, only 3 returned. The carriers Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, the pride of the Imperial fleet, all hit, burning, or sunk. How did it happen so quickly? We were Japan's elite, our carriers the most powerful striking force in the Pacific. Dawn found us confident. By dusk, we were defeated. The Americans knew we were coming. Their ambush was perfectly executed. Their dive bombers appeared from nowhere while our Zeros were caught on deck, being refueled and rearmed. I was aloft when the first bombs struck Akagi. From 5,000 meters, I watched my home erupt in flames, black smoke billowing upward, tiny figures jumping into the sea. The radio filled with confusion, contradictory orders. Then American fighters appeared, not F-4Fs this time, but newer aircraft I didn't recognize. One got on my tail, stayed there despite my most desperate maneuvers. My Zero, so nimble in the early days, felt sluggish, unresponsive. Later I learned the truth. Our newest Zeros use inferior materials due to shortages. Aluminum alloys stretched thin by the demands of war. A 12.7mm round punctured my oil reservoir. The temperature gauge climbed rapidly into the red. Black smoke streamed from my cowling. No choice but to ditch. The impact with the water nearly knocked me unconscious. The cold Pacific rushed in as my Zero nosed over and began to sink. I freed myself from the cockpit with seconds to spare. The survivors share the same hollow expression. No one speaks of what we have lost. 4 carriers, 248 aircraft, Japan's finest pilots, the strategic initiative in the Pacific. These losses cannot be replaced. Yet the radio broadcasts from Tokyo claim a great victory. The Emperor's voice, recorded for the first time in history, urges us to greater sacrifice. I listen and wonder, do they not know we are losing this war? The Americans can build a new Essex-class carrier in 14 months. Each carrier can hold over 100 aircraft. Our shipyards need 3 years to build a single carrier. The mathematics of war do not favor Japan. August 24, 1942, Rabaul, New Guinea. The heat and humidity are oppressive. Jungle rot affects everyone. My flight boots are constantly damp, my uniform stained with salt. We fly daily missions from this forsaken outpost, protecting the transport ships that sustain our garrisons across the South Pacific. The Americans bomb the airfield nightly. We sleep in foxholes dug into the volcanic soil, dive for cover when the sirens wail. I'm the senior pilot now, 23 years old with 11 confirmed victories. The new arrivals call me Sensei. Their training grows more abbreviated with each passing month. Some arrive having flown only 40 hours total, barely able to land a zero safely. In 1941, we received 500 hours of instruction before combat. Now we throw half-trained boys against American veterans. The results are predictable and tragic. My new Zero and A6M5 incorporates improvements: better diving speed, armored glass windscreen, self-sealing fuel tanks. Too little, too late. The Americans introduce new fighters monthly: Corsairs, Hellcats, P-38 Lightnings, each faster and more heavily armed than the last. Our technical intelligence reports that the Americans have built over 47,000 aircraft since entering the war. Our entire annual production is less than 10,000. I no longer write my family. What would I say? That I have seen the future and it does not include Japanese victory. That I fly daily with the knowledge that my death is merely a matter of time. Better they believe the propaganda broadcasts. Better they picture me as the smiling pilot in the recruitment posters. The experienced pilots know the truth. We discuss it in whispers, away from the new arrivals. Japan has already lost this war. Our role now is to die with sufficient dignity to negotiate favorable surrender terms. Yet we continue to fight. What else can we do? Yesterday, I encountered a P-38 Lightning over the Solomon Sea. 2 engines, twin booms, a machine conceived without concern for material shortages. I dove away rather than engage. The P-38 could easily outclimb my Zero, outrun it in level flight. Only in a turning fight would I have any advantage, and American pilots no longer make the mistake of turning with Zeros. They boom and zoom, diving attacks followed by rapid climbs to safety. Our weaknesses are well known to them now. The maintenance chief cannibalized 3 damaged Zeros to keep mine airworthy. The others are beyond repair, he explained, not meeting my eyes. We both know that 6 months ago, those beyond repair aircraft would have been restored to flying condition. Now they become organ donors for the dwindling few that still take to the sky. September 12, 1942. The hospital on Truk Atoll smells of gangrene and disinfectant. My right arm is heavily bandaged, my flight status temporarily suspended. Yesterday's mission went badly. 36 American Hellcats intercepted our 16 Zeros, escorting a bomber formation to Guadalcanal. Their new F-6F is specifically designed to counter the Zero. Faster, better armed, more durable. They tore through our formation with impunity. I managed to shoot down 1 Hellcat before 2 more set upon me. 20mm cannon shells shredded my right wing. Fragments tore into my arm. I do not recall bailing out, only the sensation of floating beneath my parachute, watching my Zero spiral into the sea trailing smoke. An escorting destroyer recovered me. The ship's doctor removed 7 metal fragments from my arm, but says I will fly again. I'm not certain whether to thank him or curse him for this news. Of the 16 Zeros on that mission, 3 returned to base. The new replacement pilots lasted an average of 4 minutes in combat. They die without achieving anything, without learning anything that might help those who follow them. It is slaughter, not warfare. The hospital ward is filled with the sound of labored breathing and occasional screams when the morphine wears off. The wounded whisper of a new American tactic. Submarines targeting our supply vessels. Food and medicine grow scarce. The orderlies water down the soup, serve smaller portions each day. Men with minor wounds are returned to duty still feverish. Those with major injuries linger, wasting away on bamboo pallets. I read captured American magazines when the nurses aren't watching. Lifetime Saturday Evening Post. The abundance depicted in even their wartime advertisements is shocking. Refrigerators, automobiles, canned goods in limitless variety. A single page from their Sears catalog shows more consumer goods than I saw in Tokyo shops during the entire year before the war. Their women work in factories, yet dress like film stars. Their children appear well-fed, their homes electrified and modern. If these images are propaganda, they are the most effective I have ever seen. If they are reality, then Japan had no conception of what we faced when we awakened this industrial giant. November 3rd, 1942. Rabaul again. My arm healed sufficiently to return me to combat duty. I find myself one of 3 remaining pilots who participated in the Coral Sea battle. The others are dead, missing, or permanently grounded by wounds. Lieutenant Okumura, who once spoke so confidently of Japan's inevitable victory, flew into the side of a mountain during a storm last week. Instrument failure, they say. More likely pilot fatigue. We fly too many missions with too little rest. The Emperor's birthday today. We held a small ceremony, raised the sun flag, bowed toward Tokyo. The meal remained meager despite the occasion. Rice with weevils, dried fish, pickled vegetables from the last supply ship to reach us. 3 weeks ago, American bombers sank 2 transports approaching the harbor. Their reconnaissance aircraft find every vessel we send. I flew 2 missions today. The first, escorting a reconnaissance aircraft. The second, protecting the airfield against an American raid. My Zero performed adequately, though the engine runs rough above 5,000 meters. The ground crew can find no spare parts to repair it properly. Fly below 5,000 meters, the crew chief advised with a shrug. This in an aircraft whose primary tactical advantage was once its high-altitude performance. During today's dogfight, I found myself behind a Hellcat, perfect firing position, only to have my guns jam after 3 rounds. I broke away before his wingman could target me. Back on the ground, the armorer discovered that humidity had affected my ammunition. The paper cartridges had swelled, causing the stoppage. Once, this would have been cause for ritual apology, perhaps even disciplinary action. Now it is merely noted in a maintenance log that no one will ever read. News from the home islands grows infrequent and heavily censored. We hear rumors of civilian hardship, food rationing, children evacuated from major cities. Tokyo suffered heavy bombing in October, according to a wounded pilot who arrived last week. He described blocks of wooden buildings transformed to ash, water mains broken, hospitals overwhelmed. The Americans fly B-29 superfortresses from the Mariana Islands, 4 engines, 10,000-kilogram bomb load, operating at altitudes our fighters struggle to reach. My mother's last letter, dated 3 months ago, mentioned air raid drills, but assured me all was well. The censors had cut out several lines, leaving holes in the thin paper. What news was too sensitive for a combat pilot to receive? That our cities burn while we fight for forgotten islands in the South Pacific. January 17th, 1943. The fever has broken, though I remain weak. Malaria, the doctor says, combined with exhaustion and malnutrition. I have lost 8 kilograms since leaving Japan. My uniform hangs loose on my frame, and I have notched my belt to the final hole. The quinine tablets are strictly rationed, reserved for pilots and essential personnel. 2 mechanics died of malaria last week. While I lay fevered in my bunk, the Americans launched Operation Cartwheel, a massive offensive against Rabaul. Over 150 aircraft struck our positions daily. Anti-aircraft fire accounted for some attackers, but our fighter strength diminishes with each sortie. We have begun burying our dead without coffins, wrapping them in parachute silk when available, tarpaulins when not. I dreamed strange dreams during my illness. My Zero transformed to paper, folding like an origami crane. My mother served a feast of American canned goods, while my father, dead 5 years now, pointed to a map showing Japanese cities in flames. Perhaps these were visions, perhaps merely the product of fever. The doctor says such hallucinations are common with malaria. The Americans now land troops with mechanical precision. Their landing craft, LCMs and LCVPs, deploy from ships that stand offshore, immune to our depleted air power. Soldiers wade ashore beneath umbrellas of fighter cover, establish beachheads, then push inland methodically. Behind them come the Seabees, construction battalions that transform jungle into airfields with astonishing speed. Within days of capturing territory, American bombers operate from runways where palm trees recently stood. I watched this process from the air 3 days ago, flying reconnaissance over Bougainville Island. Through gaps in the clouds, I saw bulldozers, graders, trucks, all painted olive drab, creating a runway where our forces had been overrun just 72 hours earlier. The ease with which they reshape the earth to accommodate their war machine is both impressive and terrifying. They do not adapt to the environment. They transform it to suit their needs. February 23, 1943. Truk Lagoon. Our remaining aircraft and pilots evacuated Rabaul last week, hours ahead of the American landing force. We left nothing of value behind, implementing the scorched earth policy ordered by Imperial Command. I helped push my previous Zero, deemed unairworthy, into the harbor rather than let it fall into enemy hands. It seemed a dishonorable end for an aircraft that had served me faithfully through 28 combat missions. I fly now with the 204th Air Group, operating one of our latest models, an A6M8 with the more powerful Kinsei 62 engine generating 1,240 horsepower. The additional power makes little difference against the latest American fighters, which now include the P-51 Mustang with its remarkable range and performance. Their pilots grow more experienced while ours grow fewer. The American submarines have nearly severed our supply lines to the home islands. We receive only the most critical shipments: ammunition, minimal spare parts, medical supplies. Food comes from local sources when available, which means fish, coconuts, and occasionally wild pigs, hunted by infantry patrols. I have not tasted rice in 6 weeks. A captured American pilot was brought to our camp yesterday, Lieutenant James Miller, shot down during a bombing raid on our positions. I was asked to translate during his interrogation, having studied English before the war. He seemed remarkably unafraid for a prisoner, answered questions with the minimum required by the Geneva Convention. When asked about American production capabilities, he laughed. "Last month, we built more planes than your entire Air Force has ever owned," he said. I did not translate this comment verbatim, fearing it would provoke his captors to violence. Later, I spoke with him briefly, without guards present. He described the Ford Willow Run plant in Michigan, a factory so vast that B-24 bombers roll off its assembly line at the rate of 1 per hour. A single factory, producing more than 600 four-engine bombers per month. I asked if this was propaganda. He shrugged and said, "Look up, Japanese. Those B-24s over your head every day didn't build themselves." I do not know if he survived captivity. The next morning, the American raiders returned. A 500-pound bomb struck the detention area. When we searched the rubble, we found no trace of Lieutenant Miller. March 19, 1943. Each day grows more desperate. Our air group has been reduced to 7 operational zeros defending Truk Lagoon, once the Gibraltar of the Pacific, now simply another target on the American advance toward our home islands. We are ordered to attack American carriers when located, but fuel restrictions limit our range. We must find the enemy within 250 kilometers or turn back, while their aircraft can strike from distances exceeding 600 kilometers. The maintenance crews have begun cannibalizing crashed aircraft for spare parts. Landing gear, radio equipment, even control surfaces are salvaged and reused. My Zero now contains components from at least 5 different airframes. The crew chief apologizes for this improvisational approach to maintenance. Once, such practices would have been unthinkable in the precision-minded Japanese Naval Air Service. Last week, I shot down 2 American aircraft, a Wildcat and a Dauntless dive bomber. These small victories offer brief satisfaction but change nothing in the larger conflict. For each American aircraft destroyed, 3 more appear the next day. Their pilots are young and inexperienced, but their aircraft are factory fresh, their ammunition plentiful, their fuel tanks full. We received news that Tokyo suffered its most devastating air raid to date. B-29s dropping incendiary bombs created a firestorm that consumed 18 square kilometers of the city. Civilians died by the thousands. The wooden structures of the capital, built close together, burned like kindling. My family lived in the Asakusa district, reportedly among the most heavily damaged areas. I have had no communication from them since November, April 7, 1943. I write this on board the submarine I-58, bound for Yokosuka. 3 days ago, our remaining aircraft at Truk were destroyed on the ground by a massive American carrier strike, over 200 aircraft against our 7 operational zeros. We never got airborne. Bombs cratered the runway, shattered our revetments, reduced our barracks to splinters. The submarine arrived that night to evacuate essential personnel. As one of the few surviving experienced pilots, I was ordered to return to the home islands to train new pilots. The irony is not lost on me. What can I teach them that will matter against such overwhelming force? How to die with slightly more efficiency. The passage has been difficult. Twice we have dived to escape American patrol aircraft. The air grows stale during these extended submersions. 48 men share space designed for 30. We sleep in shifts, 3 men to each bunk. The toilet facilities are primitive, the food minimal. Still, I consider myself fortunate compared to those left behind on Truk with no means of evacuation. The submarine commander, Captain Hashimoto, speaks frankly about Japan's situation when no other officers are present. "We have lost this war," he told me last night, his voice barely above a whisper. "The only question remaining is, how many more Japanese will die before our leaders accept reality?" Such talk borders on treason, yet I cannot disagree with his assessment. American naval strength now surpasses anything Japan could have imagined at the war's outset. Their Essex-class carriers form the backbone of task forces that operate with impunity throughout the Pacific. Each carrier embarks over 70 aircraft. Their new Hellcat fighters outperform our Zeros in every aspect save turning radius. Their industrial capacity produces aircraft, ships, and ammunition in quantities that seem limitless. Yet Tokyo radio still broadcasts news of imaginary victories, phantom ship sinkings, and exaggerated American casualties. The military censors restrict any mention of our actual situation. Civilians at home believe the Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere continues to expand, unaware that its outer perimeter collapses daily under American pressure. April 19, 1943, Yokosuka Naval Air Station. Japan is not as I remember it. 3 years of war have transformed the country I left behind. Food shortages are evident everywhere. Civilians appear thin, their clothing patched and faded. Military police stand on every corner. Propaganda posters cover bomb damage on buildings. The emperor's portrait hangs in every public space, his divine gaze watching as his empire crumbles. I have been assigned to the Yokosuka Air Group, training replacement pilots for squadrons throughout the Pacific. My students arrive with minimal flight experience, the result of fuel rationing that limits training hours. They memorize technical specifications and tactics, but lack the fundamental skills that come only with time in the cockpit. I watch them struggle with basic maneuvers and know that most will die in their first encounter with American fighters. Yesterday, I took a training flight in a 2-seat variant of the Zero. My student, a 19-year-old named Takahashi, froze during a simulated emergency. I had to take control to prevent a crash. Afterward, he bowed deeply and promised to improve. I nodded but thought, "You will be dead within a month." This is the cruel mathematics of our situation. We send inadequately trained pilots against American veterans in superior aircraft. The outcome is predetermined. The air raid sirens sounded twice today. B-29s from Saipan, beyond the range of our interceptors. We huddled in shelters, while bombs fell across Yokohama, visible across the bay. The Americans no longer bother with precision targeting of military installations. They carpet bomb civilian areas with incendiaries, creating firestorms that consume everything. Our wooden cities burn like paper lanterns. I visited my family home in Tokyo yesterday, taking a day's leave from my duties. The Asakusa district is unrecognizable, block after block reduced to charred foundations and twisted metal. My parents' house no longer exists. A neighbor living in a makeshift shelter amid the ruins told me they died in the March firebombing. Their bodies, like thousands of others, were never recovered. I performed a small ceremony at the location where our family altar once stood, burning incense in a broken bowl I found among the debris. May 26, 1943. The training program accelerates as our losses mount. Students now receive 20 hours of flight time before deployment, compared to the 500 hours I received before Pearl Harbor. We focus on taking off, basic navigation, and firing procedures. Advanced tactics are mentioned, but rarely practiced due to fuel restrictions. The Americans call their training program the Mighty Eighth and give pilots 2 years of instruction before combat. We measure our program in weeks, not years. I have begun to incorporate unconventional tactics into my teaching. How to ditch a damaged Zero in the ocean with maximum survival chance. How to navigate back to friendly territory when lost. How to preserve ammunition by firing in short bursts. These are not the glorious combat techniques of samurai pilots, but the desperate measures of an air force in retreat. The American bombing campaign intensifies weekly. Major cities suffer nightly raids. Fire departments no longer attempt to extinguish the blazes. They focus on creating fire breaks by demolishing buildings in the path of the flames. Civilians dig shelters in parks and hillsides. Children are evacuated to rural areas. Food rationing reduces most families to subsistence levels, yet official communications continue to speak of inevitable victory through sacrifice. I received new orders today. I am being transferred to the 301st Fighter Squadron, operating from Kyushu. We will fly intercept missions against B-29 formations. The assignment is considered honorable, but amounts to a death sentence. Our aging Zeros cannot reach the altitude at which B-29s operate. Their defensive armament, 12 50 caliber machine guns in remote-controlled turrets, creates a sphere of lethal fire around each bomber. Still, we are ordered to attack, to disrupt their bombing accuracy, if nothing else. Before leaving Yokosuka, I visited my student pilots one last time. I distributed among them my few remaining possessions, my silk scarf, my good leather gloves, a pocket knife from my father. They accepted these gifts with solemn bows, understanding their significance. We did not speak of my transfer or their impending deployments. Some things are understood without words. June 10, 1943, Kagoshima Air Base, Kyushu. My first intercept mission against B-29s. We took off before dawn, 16 Zeros climbing into the darkness. American radio chatter, intercepted and translated, indicated a major strike force approaching from Saipan. 200 bombers, escorted by P-51 Mustangs, flying at the extreme limit of their range. We spotted them at 8,000 meters, still climbing to reach them. Contrails marked their passage, perfect white lines against the blue morning sky. So high, so unreachable. The squadron leader ordered us to climb to 9,000 meters, the absolute ceiling for our aircraft. The Zeros labored in the thin air, engines overheating, control surfaces sluggish. Even at full throttle, we could barely maintain airspeed. The Mustangs saw us coming. 6 peeled away from the bomber formation, dove toward us from above, their favorite tactic. The first Zero exploded 50 meters to my right, riddled with 50 caliber rounds before the pilot could react. I threw my aircraft into a diving turn, the only defensive maneuver possible against attacks from above. The Mustang overshot, unable to match my turn rate. For a moment I had a firing solution on his belly. My guns chattered, but at this range, my rounds lacked killing power. I saw hits along his fuselage, but he rolled away, climbing back to altitude. 4 more Zeros went down in the initial engagement. The remainder of us pushed through to the bomber formation. The B-29s flew in tight boxes of 3 aircraft each, maximizing their defensive coverage. I selected a bomber on the formation edge, approached from below and behind, the least defended sector. At 200 meters, I opened fire, aiming for the inboard engine. Tracers connected. Black smoke poured from the nacelle. The B-29 dropped out of formation, losing altitude but still flying. I had no time for a second attack run. A P-51 found me moments later. Faster, more powerful, better armed. I could neither outrun nor outclimb him. Only my Zero's turning ability kept me alive, forcing him to overshoot repeatedly. Each time he passed, his guns took another piece of my aircraft. My rudder controls grew sluggish, then unresponsive. Hydraulic fluid sprayed into the cockpit. A round shattered my canopy, sending plexiglass fragments into my face and neck. With my aircraft crippled, I had one option remaining. I rolled inverted and pushed the stick forward, diving away from the fight. The Zero gathered speed rapidly, soon exceeding safe structural limits. The airframe shuddered, rivets popped from wing roots. The P-51 followed briefly, then pulled away, unwilling to risk his aircraft in such a desperate dive. I leveled out at 1,000 meters, nursing my damaged Zero back to base. Of 16 aircraft that launched that morning, 7 returned. We claimed 3 B-29s damaged, none confirmed destroyed. The Americans dropped their bombs with minimal disruption. The naval base at Sasebo burned through the night, visible from our airfield 60 kilometers away. July 4th, 1943. American Independence Day. They celebrated by sending 300 B-29s against targets throughout Kyushu. We launched every operational aircraft, 11 Zeros, 3 Kai-61 Tonys borrowed from the Army Air Force, and 2 antiquated A-5M Claudes that should have been in a museum. Against this pitiful force, the Americans deployed dozens of Mustangs and Thunderbolts flying escort. I led the 2nd Squadron, responsible for attacking the bomber stream from above while the 1st Squadron approached from below. The plan disintegrated upon contact. American fighter pilots, monitoring our radio frequencies, anticipated our approach vectors. They positioned themselves perfectly, diving on us from the rising sun where we could not see them until too late. My wingman died in the first pass. A burst of 50 caliber fire severed his right wing. He made no sound on the radio as his Zero spiraled downward. I never saw his parachute deploy. The second pilot in my flight took a round through his oxygen system, which ignited explosively. His aircraft became a fireball at 8,000 meters. Somehow, I survived the initial onslaught. My Zero, already patched together from previous battle damage, performed admirably despite its limitations. I managed to approach a B-29, fired my remaining ammunition into its number 4 engine. Fire erupted along the wing. The bomber rolled slowly to starboard, began a descending spiral. Crew members bailed out, tiny figures against the vast sky. I counted 5 parachutes before I had to break away from pursuing Mustangs. With my ammunition expended, I could only observe the slaughter. Our remaining aircraft, outnumbered and outgunned, fought with suicidal courage. None of it mattered. The bomber formation continued undisturbed, releasing their payloads with mechanical precision. Through gaps in the clouds, I watched Kagoshima transform into an inferno. Our barracks, hangars, fuel dumps, all consumed in rolling waves of flame. I landed at our auxiliary field, a converted rice paddy with minimal facilities. 2 other pilots joined me there. The rest never returned. We sat in silence as darkness fell, watching the glow on the horizon where our main base continued to burn. No orders came. Communications had been severed by the bombing. An old farmer brought us rice balls and weak tea. He bowed deeply, thanked us for defending Japan. What could I say to him? That we had accomplished nothing, that his home would burn next. I accepted his food with a bow and the proper expressions of gratitude. His simple faith deserved that much respect. August 15, 1945. Fukuoka. The war ends not with a glorious final battle, but with a radio broadcast. The Emperor's voice, never before heard by common citizens, emerges from static-filled speakers. His formal Japanese is difficult to understand, filled with arcane phrases and indirect references, yet the meaning becomes clear even through his careful words. Japan has accepted the terms of surrender. Around me, pilots and ground crew fall to their knees, many weeping openly. Men who face death daily now broken by the sound of surrender. I feel only a hollow emptiness where my patriotic fervor once burned. In the end, all those deaths, Japanese and American alike, led to this inevitable moment. The industrial might I witnessed in American aircraft formations has crushed the spirit of Bushido beneath its mechanized weight. I think of my Zero now, the aircraft that once danced through the Pacific skies, that climbed for glory above the clouds. How magnificent it seemed in those early days. How obsolete it became. The Americans named their carrier fighter the Hellcat, and truly it took my heaven away, piece by piece, battle by battle, until nothing remained but this defeated nation and its tired warriors. Tomorrow we will be ordered to surrender our remaining aircraft. The Americans will come with their clipboards and cameras, documenting our machines, examining our technology, counting our defeats. They will be professional, perhaps even respectful, but they will know, as we know, that their victory was inevitable from the moment their factories awakened. I end this diary now and bury it beneath the cherry tree outside our barracks. Perhaps someday, when the bitterness of defeat has faded, someone will find these pages and understand what it meant to fly a Zero in both victory and defeat, to climb toward the sun and fall back to earth, to serve an empire that dreamed too much and built too little. This is my testimony. I was there. I saw it all, and now, like the setting sun on our naval ensign, I fade into the darkness of a surrendered Japan. Lieutenant Tetsuo Nakamura, Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service. If Lieutenant Nakamura's story moved you, subscribe for more recovered war diaries from both sides of the Pacific.